issue regarding the procedural, if there are procedural lapses in the notarial services, then it puts into light the veracity, authenticity, and acceptability, admissibility of these documents. So what's stressing for me is that this isn't just only for the statements, which, don't get me wrong, Mr. Chair, this is important for us today because the statements that they will be presenting is their official testimony to our questions here today, of course. But more importantly, the fact that the same Attorney Abella is the lawyer who notarized the OVP confidential fund certification, the DepEd. Sorry, Mr. Chair, Attorney Abella is in the office of the OVP. Tama po ba, Attorney Sanchez? Maybe clarify, since you're more familiar with Attorney Abella.
Attorney Sanchez?
Yes, Your Honor.
Did she have a stint in the Department of Education?
I am not aware, Your Honor.
It's not your personal knowledge, but that's something for us to consider kasi nga po, her signature appears as the notary for the OVP confidential funds and the DepEd confidential fund certification, aside from the statements presented today. So I'm not sure, perhaps at the proper time, with the proper motion, should this committee deem wise, we might want to invite the Attorney Abella. Although this is not usual practice, I understand that in the courts, usually they would frown upon the act of having to present a notary as a witness. But given the fact that, for example, we can't even get the 9 OVP officials present, perhaps we can invite Attorney Abella, not only for her notarial stamp on the statements of Ms. Villa Del Rey and Attorney Sanchez, but also on the OVP confidential funds and DepEd confidential funds. This is just
Comsec, please take note of the manifestation of Congressman Gutierrez.
just a procedural concern. But with that out of the way, Mr. Chair, I'd like now to proceed with some preliminary questions for Ms. Villa Del Rey. So, Mr. Chair, Ms. Villa Del Rey, kayo po yung Chief Accountant ng Office of the Vice President.
Yes, Your Honor.
How long na po kayo sa OVP?
Your Honor, I've been in the OVP since 1990. During the last year of VP Laurel.
VP Laurel pa po. So you are a career public servant.
Yes, Your Honor.
So from 1990, that would put you now at 34 years of service po. And in your 34 years of service, may you just quickly give us a rundown? Kailan po kayo naging Chief Accountant?
I was employed in the OVP in 1990. I became an OIC, I cannot recall, but I appointed Chief Accountant in 1998.
That's a quick rise po, no? From 1990 to 1998, kayo po yung naging Chief Accountant. So you have been the Chief Accountant for the OVP for how many administrations now po?
For at least 7 po, 7 Vice Presidents.
And as the Chief Accountant, you are in charge of the accounting division, is that correct?
Tama po, Your Honor.
And part of your duties would include reviewing and processing the disbursements and liquidations of the OVP.
Tama po.
Okay. Before anything, I'd like to commend you for your long tenure of service. Maraming salamat po. Given that you're 6 administrations in, I'm pretty sure you are adept and an expert in your field. Given that you are, well experienced in your field, I'm sure you're familiar with yung tinatawag na government accounting manual. Is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
Can you run down for the committee ano po yung requirements ng government accounting manual in relation to cash advances?
For the cash advances under the regular, Your Honor, there should be fund or allotment to cover the issuance of cash advance. There should be cash allocation. For the travel, Your Honor, hindi po required na banded siya, pero for activities, should be banded with the Bureau of the Treasury. There should be a special order designating special disbursing officer, Your Honor.
Okay. So for yung cash advances po natin, that in yung GAM na sinasabi, this is the standards for accounting of the government, and this would apply generally to other agencies. Tama po ba?
Tama po, Your
Would the GAM on the provisions on cash advances, would that also apply to confidential funds?
No, Your Honor.
And why is that po? What is the standard that you use for for confidential funds?
For the confidential fund, Your Honor, it is covered by the Joint Circular 2015-01.
So, the same joint circular that, if you've been following our committee hearings, was cited by the ICFAO. Yun yung general basis po nila for confidential funds.
Tama po, Your Honor.
Are there provisions in the government accounting manual that would still suppletorily, in a way, apply to cash advances?
Wala po akong natatandaan, Your Honor.
Wala po.
Only the joint circular.
So there is no requirement that for cash advance for specific purpose or time-bound undertaking, that this should be recorded into the books of accounts as advances to special disbursing officers? Wala po kayong inonote na ganun po?
Can you repeat, Your Honor?
When you were talking of cash advances for specific purpose or a time-bound undertaking, I'm not sure, I'm not an accountant, but I think this is a very specific definition under the GAM. Tama po ba?
Apo.
Yeah, okay. So with that, do you record it in the books of accounts as advances to special disbursing officers?
Tama po, Your Honor.
So there are some provisions in the GAM that would apply. It's not purely in joint circular. Tama po ba this is a procedure that's outlined in the GAM?
Tama po.
So suppletory naman pala po yung GAM, no? Nagagamit rin po siya even for confidential funds.
Possible po, Your Honor. Pero nakapokus po ako sa joint circular when it comes to confidential fund.
Okay. But do you recall recording yung advances ito to special disbursing officers? Yes, you do. And the relevant provisions actually for the GAM for confidential funds is Chapter 6, apparently. So the process of the cash advance, pagkatanggap po ng check, ini-encash po ito ng SDO. Tama po ba?
As I recall, Your Honor.
As you recall. In this instance, what is your participation po in the handing over of the check? Do you foresee the encashment? Do you oversee the depositing? Ano po yung inyong interaction with the SDO in relation to this?
Your Honor, ang naging task po ng accounting sa issuance ng cash advance is only for processing. For
Meaning,
processing of disbursement voucher, not for issuance of check.
not for the issuance of the check, but the processing of the disbursement voucher. So ano po yung procedure for the processing of the disbursement voucher?
In the processing of a disbursement voucher for confidential fund, it should be supported by all the required supporting documents as stated or as required in the Joint Circular 2015-01.
Okay. So when you say po, hindi po kayo involved sa issuing of the check, are you somehow involved in the encashment or depositing of the check?
For encashment and depositing of the check, it is the SDO,
The
Your
SDO.
Honor.
So no participation required on your part doon sa SDO. They don't need any clearance from you. They don't need you to sign off on anything. It's purely the responsible of the SDO in line with the provisions of the joint circular. Tama po ba?
Tama po, Your Honor.
Okay. With that, are you aware of the procedure? Just on personal knowledge, kapag tinatanggap na po ng SDO, of course, we'd like to ask the SDO himself or herself these questions, but given na wala po sila, we'd like to ask you as Chief Accountant, kasi po, I hope you understand, minsan nalilito rin po kami as not actually practitioners in this field. Marami pong accountants and auditors pala po, no, within one office. But it's understandable na special po in confidential funds. So in relation to confidential funds po, Ms. Villa del Rey, you mentioned that you have no participation in the encashment and no participation in depositing of any sorts. But are you aware of the procedure of the SDO? Ano pong ginagawa po niya pag nakatanggap ng cheque for the confidential funds?
I'm sorry, Your Honor, hindi ko po alam. Bali, ang task ko lang po talaga is to process the issuance of cash advance for
Okay.
the confidential fund.
Sige po. Ms. Villa del Rey, ayon po sa GAM, required pong mag-institute ng internal mechanisms or internal controls ng OVP to safeguard po yung mga cash advances. And I would assume this would also apply to confidential funds. Are you aware of any safeguards that are being implemented for the OVP's confidential funds?
For the regular funds, Your Honor, yes, we have po controls. Like it should be liquidated within 15 days from issuance or upon completion of the activity.
For the regular fund. But for
Regular
confidential
fund.
funds, are you aware of any controls that you might have implemented as Chief Accountant?
Yes, Your Honor, according to Joint Circular, there should be reportorial requirements like for accounting, the issuance of cash advance is, or upon disbursement of the cash advance, it should be submitted to the audit team, resident auditor, within 7 days from issuance, to Your Honor, including all supporting documents.
Ms. Villa del Rey, when you mention resident auditor, you're talking about the resident auditor of the COA? Tama po ba?
Tama po.
Okay. So, do you have any participation in the vetting or authentication or going through the supporting documents ng confidential funds?
Supporting documents, Your Honor, for the issuance of cash advance.
Issuance of cash advance only. Pero for the liquidation, wala na po kayong kinalaman.
Wala na po, Your Honor.
So you would not be involved with the documentary evidence of payment for yung mga acknowledgement receipts, etc., etc.
No, Your Honor, based on